Hello everyone and welcome to the nation of free to play. I'm Mr. Mondstadt and today we're gonna talk about one of the most rewarding but at the same time most annoying aspects of Genshin Impact, artifact farming. And no, this is not another advice video how to get better artifacts fast, because to be honest with you, it doesn't work that way. Yes, you should farm efficient domains where you can use both sets and strongbox the rest, but it's not gonna solve our problem that everything is still RNG. Instead, if you're struggling with your artifacts and feel like you will never have enough resin to build your characters, I want to try to change your perspective from a free-to-play point of view by talking about 5 myths about artifacts in Genshin Impact. We will cover resin efficiency, forging artifacts and more, so make sure to stick around till the end. Let's start with myth number 1. Artifacts are essential for the game. This is a misconception a lot of players share, but actually artifacts are overrated. This is especially true for new players, since you don't really need any 5-star artifacts to play the game until you are at least AR 45. So don't bother farming for any pieces until you hit the end game. But even for high AR players, you actually don't need that many good artifacts. Let me explain. Currently, Genshin has 2 endgame combat modes, the Imaginary Theater and Spiral Abyss. Both reset once a month and give you some rewards if you can beat them. Imaginary Theater is, at the current stage, more of a character check than a build check. The hardest part of the Visionary mode is not the combat, but having enough characters of the right elements on your account and having them at least at level 70. Especially if you are free to play, you probably don't wish on too many banners and therefore don't own too many characters of each element. But once you have enough to enter hard or Visionary mode, clearing usually is not the problem. You might lose a star here and there, but as long as you have a few built characters, they can push you through. It doesn't matter whether your collie has 200 CV build, she's Dendro, that's enough. This is at least my experience, so for Theater, your builds don't matter much. Spiral Abyss, however, is definitely more difficult to clear and get 36 stars. But the good news is, you only need 2 teams, so a total of 8 characters to do so. And most of them don't even care about their stats, which brings us to the second myth. It's all about your crit value. Let's take a look at some popular teams in the current Spiral Abyss. Növi, Farina, Kazuha, Xylonen, Tainari, Yaimiko, Zhongli, Nahida, Arlecchino, Yelan, Zhongli, Bennett, Zhao, Farina, Janyun, Faruzan, Alhaitham, Nahida, Xingqiu, Cookie or any form of Hyperbloom, Kniech, Deya, Emily, Bennett, Navia, Farina, Bennett, Xylonen. Who cares about crit stats? Növi does, but he gets 36% crit rate for free. Tainari and Arlecchino care, but you can run them on Wanderer's Troop / Gladiator, which you probably have some decent pieces by now. Zhao cares, maybe Yelan as well. Alhaitham does, Navia, Kniech. But he gets 40% crit rate for free as well. But who doesn't care? Farina will buff you as long as you have a lot of HP on her, a high level on her burst and enough ER. Crit is nice for her damage, but not essential. Kazuha wants EM and 4-piece Vivi. Xylonen, 4-piece hero set, stats don't matter, ideally defense though. Shenyun, just attack and ER. Zhongli, just HP. Bennett, base attack and ER. Hyperbloom, EM on Electro, enough Hydro and Dendro application, that's it. To break it down, only your main DPS actually cares about their crit stats, the rest is happy with less. A 4-piece set and some ER is usually more valuable than a 40 CV goblet. Shielders don't care, healers don't care, EM scalers don't care, and for many buffs / sub DPSs it is secondary. So technically you could 36 star Abyss by having 2 good crit value builds on your account. In my case it is Raiden and Növi. They both have a 200 CV build, nothing too crazy, but more than enough for the game. Plus, one more important thing to know, double crit is not the only thing to look for. A high CV is nice for showing off, but I think the role or stat value of a piece is far more important than the crit value. In case you don't know, stat value includes useful stats like EM, ER, attack, defense or HP %, depending on what the character can use. If you keep that in mind, you will find good pieces for your favorites way easier, since there are more than just 2 stats you're looking for. So don't look for 40 CV, look for 40 stat value. This will save you time and resin and helps you in balancing your builds. Myth number 3. You farm to clear content. As we just saw, the game's content actually does not require too much investment. If you don't believe me, I just uploaded my Abyss Clear for floor 12 with 9 stars. Check my builds in the end and you know what I mean. But if you don't farm for the game, what are we all farming for then? Answer: for our brain rot. Now hear me out, that's not a bad thing, I do that as well. But I think there are two reasons to farm artifacts in Genshin. The first one is to clear the game's content, which we just talked about. But a lot of us are 36 starring Abyss already, but still spend a lot of the resin on artifacts. That is where the brain rot comes into play, because we just want to max out our favorite characters. In my case it's Raiden and my future Yoimiya, for you it might be Child, Arlecchino or Zhao. We want our mains to rise to new levels on Akasha, get the top 1% build, the 50 CV piece, but it doesn't matter. We want to get the better build, we don't need it. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should stop farming or min-maxing your builds if it brings you joy. But just so you know, you will never be done with your build. The brain rot farming is anything but efficient resin use and you will spend years in that domain without seeing a significant damage increase. But we chose to do so. And it's absolutely fine, but be aware of which type of farming you're doing, because the second kind will never be over, so don't try to rush it. Here's how I go about the second kind of farming. You should only min-max if you don't have any other use for your resin. If you want to level up a new character or weapon, then do that. If you still want to level some talents, do that. But especially during patches when you don't pull, you will have resin and nothing better to do with it, you can go back to your domain of choice. Now let's assume you're actually farming for a new character and you want to use them. How should you go about it? Myth number 4. You will use them once they have a good build. I do not believe that you need a crazy strong build to use a character in the game. So what happens instead? You're spending a lot of your resin, have a good build, but end up benching the character later on. Imagine this, you just got a new DPS that actually cares about artifacts and crit stats. What should you do? How much resin should you spend? After you level up everything else, weapons and talents, you can enter the domain and try your luck on the farming. But you should know what you're looking for when you start. A lot of players aim for a cracked build with onset double crit pieces and a total CV of over 200.
Oh bother, how long will that take?
Days, weeks, months, who knows?
A build like that usually takes months to achieve, but by then you might have pulled the next DPS and are more excited about them. Then you used a lot of your resin on a unit that is now benched for the foreseeable future. Sounds familiar? Well, here's my suggestion. Farm for a new character for 2 to 3 weeks and then take a break. By that time you should get some useful pieces and probably a CV of 140 at least. Will you get to top 5% on Akasha with that? No. Is it good enough to play the character? For sure. With a build like that, let's say 50 over 100 ratio, you can already test the character in various combat scenarios and see how much you will play them in the future. Your basic build is done and now you slowly enter the second phase of artifact farming, the brain rot phase. If you want to main the unit or simply use them a lot, you can go back and farm more pieces. You will get 160 to 180 CV build in a reasonable amount of resin, but after that it might take some time to see upgrades. On my account, most of my DPSs / sub DPSs don't have a super cracked build. My Keqing, Gaming, Xiangling, Xingqiu, Fischl are all considered mid based on their CV, but it's good enough for me. And my best build ironically is on my Tainari with 222 CV, but I hardly use him. I just got some wondrous pieces while playing the game and gave them to him, that's it. Long story short, farm for the units you use a lot and you really like, regardless of the game's meta. Resin use is only inefficient if you farm for the wrong characters and end up benching them. And last but not least, myth number 5. The artifact transmuter is a game changer. By using up sanctifying elixirs, you can now forge custom artifacts. You choose the main as well as 2 substats. A double crit goblet is therefore easier to get than ever. However, the currency for that is the by far rarest in Genshin, and if you're F2P, you only get about 16 elixirs in a year. Since one goblet costs 4 of them, you can only get 4 artifacts from the Transmuter in a year, so you should be very sure who to use it for. The rolling is still RNG, so no guaranteed upgrades. This gadget definitely can help you finish your build faster, but who are you gonna use it for? If you follow this video's advice, you shouldn't use it on the new units that just need a decent build for now. And if you use it on your brainrot characters instead, you might get an upgrade, but are you really gonna stop farming for your main? Be honest. I think it is good that the Transmuter is very limited by the game, so your artifacts don't lose in value and players don't lose even more of their sanity. I haven't forged a single artifact yet because my Raiden has a decent onset goblet already, and I wouldn't forge anything for a normal build, but only for one of my brainrot units. So I saved my elixirs. If you just got a new unit and you don't know how much you want to invest into them, don't use it. Farm a bit first, you might get lucky, or you realize that you won't play them as much as you thought at first. And once you are sure who to spend your elixirs on, I recommend using it only on sands and goblets. Sands cost 2, goblets cost 4 elixirs, but getting onset double crit pieces is, I think, a fair deal. Never forge a feather or flower, even though it's cheap, because you will get a good piece here anyway. And circlets are tricky as well, since they cost 3 elixirs and the odds of rolling crit rate on a crit damage main stat or vice versa are only 25% instead of 50% on a sand or goblet. You can decide for yourself, but I don't like these odds. Me personally, I like farming artifacts, even though it can be annoying sometimes. But I use my resin on my brainrot units if I don't need it anywhere else. However, I cannot get super cracked builds on all of my characters, so I'm happy with less and look for stats other than crit as well. This way I have good enough builds to play whoever I like, but don't feel overwhelmed at any point. I hope this video changed your perspective on artifact farming and you find a good resin management system for yourself. If you like this video, please leave a like or subscribe, it would really help me out a lot. Also, let me know your artifact farming routine and who your brainrot character is in the comments down below. I'd be really excited in learning about your experiences. Thanks again for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!